Hello and welcome to my brand new podcast. I'm Nicky Raby and I'm thrilled that you're joining us. I do lots of things. I'm an actor, coach, writer, speaker and a mum. And in my coaching work, I work with creatives, personal brands, freelancers and small businesses. In this podcast, I want to talk about success, but not in the traditional sense. I want to bring you conversations that discuss success, what it means, and how there are many different versions. We're going to be talking about business, branding, becoming visible, saying no, saying yes, and how you can create a thriving portfolio career doing more of what you love and less of what you don't. Sometimes there can be a certain mystery around the online world, so I'm going to be asking my guests how they started and grew, how they get paid, how they stand out, and how they create success on their terms. As always, please check the show notes for all things we mention and come and say hi over on social media at Nicky Raby or via my website nickyraby.com/podcast. In today's episode, I'm talking to Aaron Pryor. Someone once said to Aaron that it's amazing how much you can reinvent yourself. And this has stuck as a mark of pride with Aaron. A photographer, creative, blogger and parent, Aaron has turned his hand to many roles in the creative world and is now focused on photography of portraiture, weddings and events. Hello and welcome to a brand new episode. Today I'm talking to my good friend and first male on the podcast, Aaron Pryor. Hey Aaron, how you doing?
Hi.
Hi.
I can't believe it. First male. I like that.
No, it's a treat. So
Yeah.
if people that we know each other well, if people don't know you, tell them about who you are, what you do and what you're currently up to.
Okay, so potted history, I think, because it's lengthy. I am, first and foremost, I'm a creative. That's the only way that I've found that I can describe myself.
Yeah.
I started as an actor. I trained in musical theatre. I then did some performing work for a few years. Then I moved into the kind of business side of the theatre industry, and I tried my hand at producing. I did 2 very successful productions at the Finborough Theatre in London, which I just adored. But the producing world is tricky. You have to have a lot of money, and I don't, or didn't, still don't. And it was tricky to sort of find a way to move that forward. And although I enjoyed it and I enjoyed the challenge of it, there was something missing from that. So then an opportunity came to join an agency as a junior agent. That's when I met you, in actual fact. And we worked together at Red Hot Entertainment for a while. And that's when I really sort of realised that this was what I wanted to do. I left Red Hot to start my own agency, which was going really well. Then I had children, or my first child, I should say. And we decided to move out of London and to try things a little bit differently. And for personal reasons, really, I decided not to carry on with my agency, which was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever made, but the right decision for us, and that's what's important. Then I started doing some teaching work in Shropshire for a local theatre company, and became obviously a photographer as well. I started to take more and more pictures just with my phone, and then I bought a cheap starter camera, then I upgraded it, and then I upgraded it again, and then started taking pictures for people and being paid for it, which was amazing. And now that's what I do. I consider myself a photographer first, and then all the other stuff second. And then in March 2017, so last March, we moved from the UK to Denmark because my wife is Danish. So I'm currently sort of in my little Danish flat, or apartment, I should say. We don't call them flats here. And really interesting, kind of starting again and again. I'm building up my business here, and really sort of working through the challenges that affords.
Yeah. Isn't it funny now that we're in our 30s and beyond, and however old you are who's listening to this, that we no longer do the things that we were taught at school. We no longer do the safe job, that we work at until we're 65, and then we retire and we have the fortnight holiday year. And, you know, granted, some people do that, but I think more and more so there is this entrepreneurial space where people have this portfolio career of doing lots of different things. So I wanted to ask you, clearly you do have that entrepreneurial spirit. Was that a sign from early age?
I think so. Either that or it was autism or ADHD or whatever we're calling it nowadays. Because I
Not just too many Monster Munch.
No, yeah, quite. Blue Smarties, I think it was, wasn't it? I don't know. I guess so. I don't like sitting still. I don't like being in one space, and I don't mean literally physically. I mean kind of in my sort of life as a whole. I don't like feeling like I'm not moving forward or even sideways or backwards. I just, you know, and that's from an early age. I mean, I remember I did my first musical theatre production, for example, when I was 6. And then did at least 2 or 3 every year since then until I went to drama school. And I remember through my GCSEs and my A levels, you know, my teachers at school, the academics, were constantly saying, you do too much outside of school. You need to focus on your maths and your science. And I was like, but I don't care. I'm not interested in maths and science. I'm interested in this amazing creative space.
Lovely, darling.
Yeah, exactly. I want to dance, damn it. And that was always a real challenge for the people around me. And I think, you know, now, and having been a teacher with the theatre school in Shropshire, you know, there was this amazing space where these kids could come, these young people could come and kind of immerse themselves in theatre for a day and learn these amazing techniques and theories and everything from the teachers that were there. And then they can go off and do their academic stuff. And I never had that really when I was younger. And I think it's much more acceptable now. And people actually, you know, the amount of parents from there, I mean, obviously they're more supportive of the arts than perhaps other parents are because their kids are doing it. But, you know, this idea that somehow the arts is bad has kind of gone away, and it's only really the succession of governments that seem to think that as they continue to cut funding and education for arts. But you know, I think so. Yeah, I think it was there from early on.
Yeah, and how? Well, I guess one thing that I always consider you to be really brilliant at is actually taking action. So you have an idea and then you make it happen. You launch it, you create it, you design it, and ultimately you get paid from it. How do you do that? What's your process?
I should say that's probably 1 in 10 ideas that actually gets created and worked on. But you know, I'm always thinking about things. You know, I see something in the street, I watch something on TV, I talk to friends and colleagues, and I come up with an idea and I think this is amazing. You know, an example of that is the other day I was on Twitter and somebody who I follow had put, why isn't there a service where somebody will come, take away your Christmas tree and dispose of it for you? And so you don't have to worry about it, and they'll even hoover your carpet so you don't have to pick up the pines. Yes. And, you know, literally, I spent a good 40 minutes thinking,
right, get it down the stairs.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, forgetting a bauble, and then you smash it and then you curse, and then, you know, and then you go upstairs and you find that half the tree is actually still in your living room anyway, you know. And I honestly, I spent a good 40 minutes thinking, how could I make that work? Now, I'd need a van, and then I'd have to, and I was thinking, I have no interest in Christmas tree removals. Yes. I mean, you know, so I think you have to, the first process for me is filtering what is actually a good idea and what is just ridiculous. And then I don't know if this is right. And I think if I was at a business school, you know, if I'd probably get shot down for it. But actually, I kind of find that, you know, when I look at people like Richard Branson and those kind of entrepreneurs that I really admire, I think it's probably very similar to the way they work, is that if you have that idea and you think it's good, then you have to just try it. You have to just do it. And I think, you know, the more I've thought about certain ideas, the more I've kind of processed and reworked and you know, spent ages on the tiny details. Those are the ones that actually I don't do. because I just, you talk yourself out of it. I've been contemplating doing online courses, for example, for a long time. And we've talked a little bit about this between ourselves, but, there's this idea of who wants to buy an online course from me? Who wants to learn how to take their camera out of automatic mode and put it in another mode? Or even who wants to learn how to, read and understand Shakespeare if I was going to go down the theatre route, for example. Yeah. And so the more I talk to myself about it, the more I think, okay, this is how I could work it. This is how I could set it up. This is how I could, structure the course. The more I go, yeah, but you're not going to know, are you? Because nobody really wants to buy it. It's a waste of time. And then I don't do it. So I think for me, the real key is you just have to do it. If you think it's a good idea, when it comes into your head, if you think, oh, yes, that works, then you have to do it. But it's got to be something that you've got to be passionate about. I mean, the Christmas tree removal business is a great idea. And if somebody wants it, take it and do it. But I have no interest in Christmas tree removals, to be honest. Yeah. So that was dead in the water before it even started. But yeah, I think it's about just having the gumption to just get on with it. And, for that, you don't need buckets and buckets of money. In fact, it's probably better if you don't, because, I think you can throw huge amounts of money at a business idea that just doesn't work.
Yeah. And actually, you take quicker action if you know that you need it to make money later down the line, and quite quickly rather than later down the line. And one thing that I find sometimes with clients is they'll say, well, I don't really need it to make money, so maybe I'll just do all these things for free for all these times. And I think, well, actually, if you do get money in the door, whether you need it or not, you can reinvest it in your business and you can make quicker progress than you would otherwise, rather than if you were just funding it or doing everything on the cheap. And I think it's about also, we're lucky that we have really good people around us, making sure that you only share your idea with people who will support you and go, go on, Aaron, yeah, you can do it, or that sounds good, or what do you need, or how can I support you, rather than like, oh, I heard of somebody that tried that, disaster.
Yeah.
Worse. And I'm sure over the years in our theatrical business, there's always somebody who will tell you that time who's, their uncle's sister's dog's friend said, oh, that he used to do a bit of karaoke, or he could have made it, or he was singing at Butlins, or all of these things. And I think it's such a shame sometimes that life gets in the way of your dreams and what you want to achieve in your life because of maybe other people's limitations.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think, part of the sort of entrepreneurial spirit, if you want to call it that, is that filter. You have your close network around you. You have those people who can provide not necessarily even the encouragement. What I need more than anything is the platform to fall onto. Those people that when that idea doesn't work, will go, never mind. Next time, next one. Let's keep going. It's I tell my ideas to a very, very small collection of probably actually only my wife, and every now and again she'll roll her eyes and go, yes, dear, because she knows I probably won't even bother to start it. It's just an idea that's come off my head, and but actually when I do go for it, when I started my business as an agent, I was running it out of my living room, which, I was living in a flat in London. It was my living room, my kitchen, my dining room, all in one space. And then I decided to plonk a desk in the corner and fill it with other people's photos and things. And, but she absolutely supported that. And she was 110% behind me. And I think without that, I couldn't have done it. Of course I couldn't have done it. And, and when I made the decision to close, because it just wasn't quite working out with having a child and trying to balance all of those different things and trying to earn enough money to keep my wife and child alive. She was, yeah, exactly. Food. She was very supportive of that as well. And that's really the key. And I think, like you mentioned, there's always somebody who will say, oh, it's risky, isn't it? Yeah. That's going to cost you a lot of money. And actually, you've talked about this quite a bit on your sort of Instagram stories and things like that. This idea that, you you don't have to have huge tech knowledge, for example, to make a website now.
Yes.
There are companies like Squarespace, even WordPress. I mean, WordPress is a little bit clunky sometimes, and you have to have a bit of knowledge. But Squarespace, you can purchase it. You log into it. It's like 15 quid a month, isn't it, or something?
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, it's a real drag and drop kind of moment, and it can make it. I mean, I've designed all my own website myself, and I'm not a designer. I don't have a business degree. I have an acting degree, for goodness sake. So, I think you make a really good point there, is that sometimes we can just all live in our heads so much and feel that we can put that hesitation on ourselves, whereas actually you just have to get your feet wet and try it and talk to people about your idea, ask for feedback in a safe space, as it were, and move forward, I guess. So on the flip side, when things have been tricky, how have you kept going, or changed direction, or known when to pivot, or got yourself out of those tricky situations that life maybe throws at you?
Good question. I am remarkably resilient, I think, in that sense. If you talk to me about people, I'm not so good. I think like most creatives, like most people who are kind of in touch with their emotional side, and that's not necessarily to say that other people aren't. It's just that I think actors particularly have a greater sense of emotion, possibly because of the nature of what we do, and it's
weird,
kind of our job.
Crazy stuff that you'll have to do at drama school, where part of you's going, okay, well everybody else is doing it, but it does feel a bit odd.
Yeah, I'm a tree. How does that make me feel? So I've always had kind of anxiety issues, and I hate the idea of calling everything a mental health problem because it feels like it's a bit of a buzzword, and I don't work for The Guardian. But I think a lot of people have struggled with it on various levels, and I can walk into a room and feel like literally everybody in that room hates me. And that's quite difficult sometimes. And then I have other days where I'm just on fire and I feel like everything's going well. Every idea I have is going to succeed, everything. And so I think when you balance that, and you have to kind of, I think the most important thing for me is that I have an awareness of that. I have an awareness of my own shortcomings in terms of, that's not the right word, shortcomings, because it's not a bad thing. I have an awareness of my own issues, should we say. And so there are days when I will sit at home and I watch endless reruns of Top Gear and QI and things like that, and just feel like nothing's ever going to work. The world is against me. I hate everything. I wish I was, living on my own in an island somewhere where I could just quietly go about my business and not have to be involved with anybody or anything ever again. And then, I just have to acknowledge that that's the way it is sometimes. And then, the sooner I do that, the sooner I kind of go, okay, this is fine. Everybody has these days. It's just that sometimes mine might be worse than somebody else's. And then the next day I find that I wake up and I've slept well and I feel like I can do it again. I feel like I can get back in the race. And I think that's, for me, the biggest part of that has been learning to kind of acknowledge that that's there all the time, that there's that demon somewhere in me, that little thing in the back of my brain that goes, you're going to fail. And I just kind of have to tell it to shut up and get on with it. And I think, if somebody once said to me, Aaron, you seem to have this amazing ability to reinvent yourself. And it kind of stuck with me. And I think it's true. I think I've always had that thing of, maybe it's because of that issue, maybe it's not, that I've always just been able to go, okay, next project. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's do the next thing. Because I think in the same way that if you dwell on an idea, sometimes you can talk yourself out of it. Yeah. If you dwell on a failure or something that hasn't gone the way you planned, you're never going to do anything else, because you're always going to come back to that and say, yeah, but that happened. Again, 1 in 10 of my ideas I make happen. The other 9, at some point along that process of idea and coming to fruition, get kicked into touch. And, I think if you if you focus on those, you're never really going to get that one, because you're always going to think, yeah, but that other idea didn't work, so this won't either. And I think, you have to be careful of listening to yourself in that sense, but also knowing that, you are going to have a bad day when something doesn't go wrong, when something doesn't go right. Sorry, you are going to have a bad day. You are going to feel like the world is against you, and you are going to say those cliches like, why is it always me? Yeah. Which I think I've said more times in my life than anybody. But then you have to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, have a cup of coffee, and smash it the following day.
Yeah. I think really understanding what you need is important, and to admit that to yourself, and not to be frightened to share that with the people around you. Whether that is, I just need you to all go out the room so I can have 5 minutes peace, or I just need to go for a run, or sit quietly, or close my laptop, or open it, or whatever it might be. Because I think we're taught to sort of put up and shut up as from kids, of like, oh, you don't really mean that, or just get on with it. And sometimes you can't. And sometimes when you've got young kids as well who are awake, like my child is, something like a run of bad night sleeps can really put you back and affect lots of different things. And also as well, when you're looking at social media, it can feel like everybody else has got everything together. Nobody else is having any of these issues that you are. Everybody has got it figured out. And especially if you're working on your own, or, in an entrepreneurial, working from home, or even in a small co-working space, you can feel that isolation sometimes. And that's when I know myself, I can start to creep into my head and think, maybe I won't do that, or I'll just put a wash on, or I'll just scroll YouTube, or whatever it might be.
Absolutely. And I think, for me, just going out to the shops sometimes is a great way to kind of clear my head, actually. I go to the shops, I get the bread and milk or whatever it is that we need. I come back and I think, right now I can get on with it. Yes. I think the social media point that you've made is one that's worth kind of lingering on for a moment. I look at some accounts on Instagram, for example, and you see these accounts that are followed by 30,000 people, and you think, how on earth do you, I've got 600 or however many, less than 600, I think it is actually. And, I don't know how they create this kind of enormous following. And then I just think, but that's a job for some of these people. Some of these people literally spend their lives doing it. And also, the lives that you see on those websites, particularly kind of the lifestyle ones where they, they're constantly being sent stuff by, luxury jewelry brands or clothing brands or, skincare brands. And they go, oh, I've just been sent this amazing gift and look how wonderful it is. And I'm like, I want the free stuff too. This isn't fair. And then I realized that actually,
address people.
Yeah, exactly. Do I really want to spend my entire life living through Instagram and kind of presenting this image of myself to the world? Instagram is great and I love it and I love being a part of that community, but there's more to life than creating images for Instagram. And actually, most of the images that any of us create for Instagram aren't necessarily real. Yeah. If I took a picture of my living room now, would I post it on Instagram? Hell no.
Oh no, I'm recording this in my son's bedroom, and because he's now got this new IKEA kitchen, he likes to pull everything out. So actually we look like we've been burgled. So
yeah. Oh yeah. I know that very well.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, if I want to take a picture of my living room, I have to spend 4 hours tidying up first. It's not that bad. It's not quite 4 hours. It's 3.5. But and I think it is worth remembering, especially when you're at the point, with what we've been talking about, being entrepreneurial, having ideas, having kind of development of ideas, if you go on social media, Pinterest is the same, Instagram, Twitter, any of those, and you start looking at or comparing your ideas to other people's, you're always going to come up under, because, these people are already doing that. So, you can't really compare an idea with something that's already happening. You can see where you want to get to and you can get ideas and you can feed off that. But it's very easy to go the other way and to say, oh no, this person has a following of 30,000. They're obviously much better than me. I'm not going to, I can't do that.
Yeah. And making sure that your online and your offline lives are in check with each other, because I hate it sometimes when you go to a networking event or something and very quickly a camera is being shoved in your face and you're having a selfie, and I go, what, I haven't said hello to you properly yet. Or like, you're being asked for your handle or whatever. Not saying that I'm any kind of celebrity by any means, but for me, the offline connection is still very right. It's all very well having likes and followers and hearts and all whatever way that people show their love, but you have to still have that connection, and it has to be real, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, how many of those 30,000 followers that some of these people have, how many of them are actually people that they converse with on a daily basis or they meet up for coffee with? There's probably like 5. And actually most of I read an interesting thing. I don't know if it was a podcast or whether I read it. I can't remember. But it was very interesting how people were saying that, and this is part of the imposter syndrome that I think a lot of people kind of struggle with when they're putting themselves out there as a personal brand or as an idea with things like courses and stuff. That idea of, am I worth it? Who's going to buy from me? That sort of thing. And one of the things that I find is my Instagram started as a personal thing. It was a social media channel like Facebook or Twitter or any of those where I could just plot pictures of what I was doing or what I was eating or what my kids were up to, and it was seen by some of my friends and they might like it or they just ignore it, and that's fine. But as I've kind of grown it to show some of my photography work and to try and kind of create that tribe, which is one of the buzzwords that people use, I wonder whether my actual friends look at it and think, who is this idiot? Who does he think he is? With all the hashtags and tell me in the comments what you think. I wonder whether some of my real friends, my actual, human friends, think of it. And, you have to kind of put that to the back of your mind. But those are the people actually whose opinions really matter to me. And those are the people that when I go for a beer with or out for dinner with or whatever, that I'm going to talk through my woes and worries and day-to-day life with. I'm not going to put all of that online because it doesn't fit that profile. And I think keeping those things in the sense of an online offline profile, keeping those things very safe and separate is very, very key as well. You have to put your phone down and the computer shut.
I guess I've had that as well, as I'm sure you have from being an actor, that a lot of my in real life friends didn't really get what I wanted. I mean, even, family, they're like, okay, great, you're going to drama school, but what is it? What are you doing? And how do you make money? And I think it's just about keeping yourself in check, because as we all know, we can quickly go down a rabbit warren of craziness. So
absolutely. I mean, if I had £1 for every time somebody said, when are you going to be on EastEnders? Or the one that I hated is particularly because I was a musical theatre actor, obviously then I'm a singer by definition. The one I really hated was, why don't you just audition for Britain's Got Talent?
Oh, God.
And I'm like, no. I
don't want to juggle fire in a Union Jack dress. Or maybe
and
I don't know.
I have no interest in Simon Cowell and his cronies. That's not the business that I want to be in, and I'm not belittling anybody that does go on Britain's Got Talent. It's a great show, if that's what you're into. But it's not for me. But like you say, there's that misunderstanding, that misconception that life is something other than what it is, which is normally, drinking tea, sitting around waiting to be called by your agent. I'm sure that some of my friends, I was lucky because a lot of my friends where I grew up in Shropshire were also into theatre, so they kind of got it as well. But I'm sure some of my extended family and friends thought that when I moved to London, it was all, champagne and,
dancing at the bus stop, like you were Fame.
Yes, exactly. Jumping on a taxi and going to the Ivy and all that sort of thing. And in reality, it was, scraping money together to get on the bus to go to the next audition and, and finding a job that I could do whilst I was waiting for auditions to come in and all that sort of stuff, So I think you've got to keep it real, folks.
Yeah, exactly. Well, to finish off, I've got a few quick fire questions for you, which I would love to hear your answer. So if you could do something else for the day, what would you do?
God, I don't know.
Okay.
Go on holiday.
Go on holiday. Yes, exactly. How do you celebrate your success?
Quietly.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm not a big shouter about things that go well. I just, because there's always something else to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I remember my mum gripping my wrist very tightly as a child, saying, "Never throw me a surprise party." And I feel the same, like that would just be terrible and sort of just, yeah, I wouldn't cope well with it because I'm just a bit of an introvert. I'd be like, oh no, wait, oh, you've travelled so far. Anyway, do you have any tools or resources that you couldn't live without? Maybe some techie stuff or camera stuff?
Yeah, I love my camera. I fiddle with it constantly. Please take that in context, everyone. And I'm finding more and more that I'm buying stuff to go alongside my camera. So I've got my camera body for anybody that's interested and is a geek like me. It's a Nikon D610 full frame camera.
I'll add it in the show notes so people can have a look at it. Yeah.
I've got a couple of lenses for that. I recently invested in a GoPro. I've recently invested in some other tech stuff, like I'm talking to you now on the BBC through my Blue Yeti microphone and my Blue headphones. And, that's, so I get a little bit of a kick from that. The other thing I can't live without is podcasts, weirdly, because I'm on one now. There are a few that I adore, which are, really great. And also, I think this new thing of like the Instagram Live, not Instagram Live, but the Instagram Stories. There's a few people on there that I just find quite inspiring. And I think that's important as well, to find the things that make you go, oh yeah, that's great. I feel really refreshed after watching that. Or listening to that podcast, I feel like I can process that idea now. So they're important.
I look at people and think, oh, I can't believe she's doing that, or I can't believe he's doing that. I actually flip it the other way, even though I've had to work hard on that, because we all have that sort of, pang of jealousy occasionally. We're human beings after all. But I now turn it around and think, well, if it's possible for her, then maybe it could be possible for me. Or maybe Absolutely. If he does this, maybe I can make it work in a way that works for me.
Absolutely. And I think there's also that thing with what I love about the Instagram Stories is it's not as curated as Instagram or Twitter or Facebook can be. It feels much more real. So, when you get people talking on their stories or telling you what they're doing during the day or telling you what projects they're working on and things like that, or just giving advice and guidance like you do a lot on your Instagram Stories, for example, they're very often it's people in their gym wear because they're on the way home from going to the gym, or, they're sat in there. There's one, there's a lady called Fiona Humblestone, who's the brand stylist, is her Instagram handle. Yes. And she puts a story on almost every day. And half the time she's sitting in her walk-in wardrobe, and so I have this real mix of listening to these really sort of interesting things that she's talking about with design and structure of digital design or print design and things like that. And at the same time, I'm looking at the top behind her thinking, oh, that looks nice.
Yeah, what's the shelving unit like? Oh, where does she keep the books?
Yeah. So I wonder where her pants are. I wonder where her tights are. That sort of thing. It's just these random thoughts in my head. Or, oh, that dress looks pretty. But it's real. It's, and I like that because that's also quite inspiring. It also makes you realise that these people aren't, some sort of online demigod. And that's important too.
Yeah, for sure. What books would you recommend that you've loved?
Oh my gosh.
Just give me one that might be good for, or just something that maybe changed you or moved you or, gave you the nudge.
Do you know what? This is really terrible. I'm not a huge reader. And I sort of dip in and out of a lot of books. So yeah, I don't have one. I don't think I've read bits of lots of books that I kind of find.
Me too. And I really feel like life is too short to read a book, spend time reading a book that you're not enjoying. There's plenty of other stuff to read.
Absolutely, and also I find a lot of the sort of non-fiction stuff, those kind of, because it would be very easy for me to say, oh, the Duncan Bannatyne book on getting rich, or the Richard Branson book on his life story and all that sort of stuff. And I just think, but actually some of those, that kind of self-help category isn't for me really, because actually sometimes they make me feel more depressed than anything.
Or like, why haven't I bought a boat by the time I was 23?
Yeah, exactly. And how come he can turn, Duncan Bannatyne, wasn't he selling, I think he was selling ice creams, wasn't he, from one ice cream van, and is now this kind of huge multi-millionaire, and an amazing journey it was too. But, is that really applicable to me?
Yeah.
The world has changed, things have changed, and so whilst that was very interesting, I read that a long time ago, so I can't remember the title of it. But, I find those sort of things very interesting. But I think for me, it's more about podcasts and hearing people's journey through that, and lots of different people's stories.
I feel passionate about that in the women in business conversation, in the way that I don't have to wear a bodycon dress. I don't have to put my hands on my hips or do that weird pointing pose for things like, you can do it too. That's just not my style at all. And, the fact that I'm a mum now, I like to add a bit of heart and soul and care and kindness into what I do as well. Of course, there are some times where I challenge my clients and say, come on now, like this can happen, or let's see if we can make this work. Of course, but there is more than one way to do something.
Absolutely. And I also think, like, the people who tend to write these books are the people who have huge amounts of success and financial gain from that success, but then I feel like sometimes forget where they started from, possibly, or don't. I mean, there's a few people I follow on online profiles, or I get their newsletters or whatever, and from these, and they're American, the seven-figure business people, and you're going to know what I'm talking about straight away. But for anybody that kind of doesn't, that's listening to it, seek them out, because as much as anything, they're quite funny. And they say, I now run this seven-figure photography business, and this is how I did it. And you're encouraged to join their workshops and all that sort of stuff, where they actually don't teach you anything. They just use it as a platform to sell the stuff that they want you to pay for.
Well, they just talk about themselves, and I'm just but I've heard your story because I've read it on your website. What else have you got?
Yeah, and they say, I'm going to teach you how to do X, Y, and Z, but they don't. They teach you X, or the beginning of X, and then get you to buy, the £300 course that they're actually selling. And that's fine, because that's how they make their money. But, this idea of seven figures will change your life. I suppose in a financial sense, I'd be able to buy my own house, and I could probably buy a nice car and all that sort of stuff. But is that a measure of success for me? No.
Absolutely. And I feel this more and more so, that I was talking about it on an interview the other day. When we were in the 90s, the idea of like success was a mock Tudor house, a footballer boyfriend, some great Caterpillar boots, and I don't even know, it wasn't even a computer because they weren't really invented, but it that was that different version. So I think it's important just to check in with what you want, and sometimes those things such as freedom or flexibility or seeing your kids, that's a measure as well. One final question, because my kiddo will be back any second.
Hooray!
And he will probably be coming on the podcast at some point. Not that he's going to do a Shakespeare monologue or something.
I like his appearances on your stories on Instagram, I have to say.
Yeah, he suddenly has become a bit aware of the camera, which is frightening. But yeah, there we go. Finally, where would you like to be in 5 years' time?
I think doing what I'm doing, but bigger.
Yeah.
I'd really like
to be, house.
Yeah, exactly, with Ferrari and a seven-figure business. No, my goal here, I'm still sort of settling into Denmark. We've been here less than a year, and so everything's still quite new and quite fresh. But my ultimate goal now, and whether it happens in 5 years or maybe a little bit longer, is to have my own sort of photography studio where I can sort of base myself out of, where I can get people coming in to do portraits. And I hate those kind of structured family photo shoots, and I'm sorry if anybody's got one hanging on their wall, but
rug.
Yeah, the fluffy rug, or the white, pure white walls and floor, and dad's on the floor, and then it's mum on top, and then the kids on top of that, and then the dog sitting next to them and all that. And I'm not interested in that. I'm a bit more real. So the idea of having a studio is kind of odd as well, but somewhere where I can base myself out of, where I'm doing weddings. I love shooting weddings. Because I do them both in the UK and in Denmark still. That's a little plug. And
Aaron's available.
Hello. But there's a real sort of sense of village that comes with it, and a real responsibility, which is quite scary, because I got married once. and it was one day, and then it was finished. It was done. And so the only sort of lasting memory that we really have of that is the photos. I mean, obviously you have your own memories, but physical, tangible memory is looking at the pictures and saying, "Oh, didn't we have a lovely time?" And I think, as a photographer, that's a huge responsibility.
Oh, and I bet it's brilliant for people watching opportunities as well.
Oh, God.
I remember when my mum got married, for the second time. I wasn't there the first, but I remember she got married on like the 27th of December, and she had this it was clearly the only photographer that was available, and he said to my brother, "Oh, do you want to stand next to her, that pretty girl?" And Si went, "Oh, she's actually my sister," and he went, "Oh, unlucky for you."
Oh my goodness.
So I was like, "Oh no, it's fine."
Okay, I promise.
We're happy.
I promise I have never said that, and I will never say that. But I think it's it's a great opportunity. You see somebody's great aunt who's in her late 80s, and she's coming in, and then she's coming in with her 2 sticks, and she's saying hello to you, and then
going across some like crazy couples where you're like, "Oh my goodness, this is going to end in tears."
Exactly, and you kind of want to shoot it, but at the same time you really shouldn't. But then by 8 o'clock. Exactly. But then by 8 o'clock, once all the speeches have been done and the cake's been cut and all that, and you're just about packing up to go home, she's the one that's in the middle of the dance floor with the sticks in the air and all that sort of stuff. And that's just wonderful. Being part of those incredible celebrations is such a privilege. And so I want to be doing that just all the time, I think, and being part of people's lives in that way is really, really rewarding. So I guess that's my 5-year plan. More weddings.
And if people want to find out more about you, what you're doing, where can they find you?
The first place to start is my website, I think, which is aaronpryor.com. I'm also on Twitter and on Instagram, and I know you're going to link to those in the show notes and all that sort of thing, so I won't spell out the handles and things, but it's basically at Aaron Pryor, or on Instagram it's at _Aaron Pryor, because somebody got there first. And if you want to connect, love to hear from people, love to chat with people. So feel free to sort of tweet me or send me a message on Instagram if you've heard this.
Amazing. Thank you.
Pleasure.
So much. What a treat to talk to you. Oh, and one other thing that you could be doing in 5 years is speaking better Danish than your children.
Yes, which at the moment I don't.
Winning at Danish.
Yeah, they're winning me at the moment. Winning me? They're beating me at the moment, which is distressing. But I'm old.
No.
I don't adapt to it as well as they do.
Oh, I know. These kids, Anyway, thank you. I will speak to you soon. Thanks everyone for listening. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please rate and review. Please subscribe. Please tell your friends and share it. I would love it. Until next time, I will see you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening today. If you want to connect further with Aaron, you can go to his social media handles, which are listed in the show notes, or you can go to his website, www.aaronpryor.com. You can come and connect with me across social media at Nicky Raby, or via my website, www.nickyraby.com/podcast. I'll see you very soon. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and I would love to hear what you thought of the episode and share any takeaways with me. Come and find me across social media at Nicky Raby, or you can visit the podcast page, nickyraby.com/podcast.